Can you hear me and can you see my presentation?
Yeah. It's
That's
okay.
very fan- fantastic. So I am going to talk to you. I'm going to contextualize my previous talk on management of the difficult neonatal airway uh, by actually talking about how you would manage babies where you have difficulty with ventilation and intubation when they're preterm. And for this part of the talk, which will take me about 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about this difficulty in extremely preterm babies and how you manage that particular situation. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, this is a baby that's delivering at about 24 weeks of gestation. And clearly, what we know is when these babies deliver, they are extremely small, extremely immature. Their airways are extremely friable and at very high risk. The majority of these babies, I would say, about 70% of them are known to breathe well at birth, provided they're not perinatally asphyxiated or have other risk factors. But a lot of them will need, despite their abilities to breathe, support with breathing. And what you can see here is one of my esteemed colleagues giving a baby some inflation breaths in order to support its breathing, while the nurses are applying some saturations. Now, clearly, from our perspective, the challenge in this particular situation, when the baby is this small, is twofold. A, we need to effectively aerate, ventilate, and expand the lungs. But B, a lot of these babies at some point might even need to be intubated for the purposes of surfactant. And in very small babies, with people as they're gaining experience, they can have difficulties both with mask ventilation and with intubation, as you can see in this particular baby, where they had difficulty actually trying to mask ventilate the baby. So actually decided that they would try and intubate the baby. Now, what you can clearly see at this particular point is that my colleague has got the baby's head in neutral position. We're using quite a large size mask. We now have 00 masks available, which we can use for babies as small as 400 grams. But that's really important. Having a good seal is very important. More importantly, from our perspective, you can see how difficult it is because the baby's being handled. So, are we actually effectively ventilating? Somebody keeping an eye on chest wall movement? What you can clearly see is the heart rate's not rising with these ventilation maneuvers, and the baby's saturations are actually dropping. So the team actually is unable to move the baby's chest, hence they decide to go for intubation in this particular circumstance. Now, when we have difficulty intubating any baby, the classical concept that we've been taken through, which is part of the neonatal resuscitation protocol, is MR SOPA. And what we need to make sure is that we're using an appropriate size mask, that that mask is effectively applied to the baby's face, that you have good seal, that you're not overextending, that you've got the baby's head in neutral position, because that compromises your ability to get a good seal. But there are some very simple things that some people sometimes forget. So a baby who's about 5 or 600 grams at 25 weeks of gestation has a very small stomach. And when you continue to do IPPV for a period of time, often what you might find is that you inflate the baby's stomach with air. That inflation actually splints the diaphragms, and you're very quickly in a situation where you can't continue ventilating these babies. A simple maneuver, passing an NG down in those circumstances and getting somebody to decompress, will greatly help your abilities to be able to ventilate that baby. What is very important also is that we often are advised to start with pressures of 20 to 25 over 5. In my setup, we start in 30% FiO2 and we start with pressures of 20. We give 5 inflation breaths. These are 3-second inflation breaths, which is slightly different to how the NRP actually performs their ventilation inflation strategy. But these are babies with very stiff lungs. We might not be using enough pressure, hence we might not be moving the chest. So we might have to put those pressures up gradually to about 25, repeat another set of inflation breaths. And some of these babies, from our perspective, as I've described, so with the NRP, you tend to use what we call ventilation breaths. But in our setup in neonates, we use the neonatal life support protocol. And the recommendation there is to actually use 3-second inflation breaths. So some babies will obviously need higher I times. The most important aspect of managing to ventilate babies is making sure that you're not failing due to human factors. And human factors basically means that we might have any of these things that is a problem. We haven't recognized them, but they're easily correctable. And actually, if we can recognize that by passing a nasogastric tube, we can decompress the stomach, that is something that's easily correctable. And by doing all of these things, we will ameliorate our difficulties with ventilation. But it might be that this preterm baby has a genuine anatomical problem, which is causing an issue. It might have airway obstruction due to secretions. It might be, and we know that preterm babies have quite large tongues. They tend to have glossoptosis, and it might just be that while we're actually providing these breaths, we're using very high pressures. We're using very high pressure on the face. And what we now know is that the trigeminal neuralgic reflex gets stimulated, and some of these babies often develop glottic obstruction. So it's really important that we're not using such a high seal pressure on their face that that's actually causing pain. Once that happens, they develop glossoptosis, and a mixture of both of these problems, would necessitate us going through MR SOPA again, but sometimes an inability to actually inflate these babies' chests. What we must also recognize is that some preterm babies born as early as that may have rupture of membranes for an extended period of time. So I've recently managed a baby with rupture of membranes from 13 weeks, where we found it extremely difficult to actually ventilate this baby's chest without actually increasing pressures. And what classically these babies present with is hypoplastic lungs. Occasionally, some babies, during the process of providing inflation ventilation breaths, their lungs will pop. And if they develop bilateral tension pneumothoraces, that air will accumulate in the pleural space and will make ventilation virtually impossible. Some babies, when you intubate and ventilate them at later stage, have severe chronic lung disease and need very high pressure. But in the delivery suite, these are some of the reasons that you might have difficulty trying to ventilate and move the chest wall by establishing an FRC in babies who you're mask ventilating in delivery suite. Now, not unexpectedly, a lot of our colleagues would actually get into trying to intubate these babies if they're having difficulties with mask ventilation, if the baby has significant respiratory distress syndrome, if the baby's chest is very stiff in order to give surfactant. But one of the questions that I want to emphasize to you about management of preterm babies is that these babies can be mask ventilated effectively. You can put a nasogastric tube down, and if they're breathing spontaneously and you're having difficulty intubating them, you can actually use non-invasive ventilation strategies to manage these babies until you get them into a better situation. That means that you can use CPAP if they're breathing spontaneously. We can deliver CPAP in delivery suite using the mask. You can also, in your setup, if you have facilities, be able to actually transfer the baby on CPAP and use CPAP on high flow to humidify the baby, allow it to spontaneously breathe with PEEP to actually recruit the lungs. And that means that for you, you will be able to establish the baby's breathing, an FRC, and effectively ventilate this baby while you're trying to establish whether this baby really needs intubation or not. And if this baby needs intubation, it's then kind of deciding what it is that you're going to change about your failed intubation attempt in delivery suite to be able to enable you to intubate the small baby. Now, preterm babies can be difficult to intubate for a variety of reasons. There might be a buildup of secretions. You might have loads. Even suction catheters might not be enough in situations where you have florid secretions. You might need a large bore suction catheter with high suction to clear them. Some of these babies sometimes have vocal cord spasm, but a not uncommonly encountered situation is a situation where you have been trying to intubate a baby repeatedly, and the preterm baby, as you know, the airways are very fragile and very small, and they go on to develop glottic edema. Now, that is a very, very difficult situation to manage, and I will give you my experience of managing a situation like that in a 25-weeker. But the one thing in this situation is that when the baby is small, you can't use an LMA or an iGel if you're failing to intubate, because actually they're too large. So how does video laryngoscopy help? So I'm going to show you some videos. So this is a video of a baby that you can see who's about 27 weeks of gestation. And what you can see is that this baby is being intubated using a video laryngoscope. And you can see how secretions obscure your view, but you've got a partial view over here. So what this baby really needs is good cricoid pressure, because the tube is actually slipping behind. So because I know this baby needs cricoid pressure, I'm going to give cricoid now. So what you can see, the tube is slipping behind, but with a little bit more cricoid. Can you see how the airway becomes better, more prominent? And can you see how repeated failed attempts at intubation actually cause trauma to this airway? So what we need to do in situations like that is, a person has had numerous attempts, we probably need a fresh person to be intubating this baby. So you bail out and you get the most experienced person who's going to manage the airway. So we're continuing IPPV in these circumstances, and we're having a fresh attempt at intubation. And you can see how secretions are a problem here, but good cricoid pressure as delivered here. And the tube goes through without any problems. So what is important is that we've used the concept that I've spoken to you about before, which is the human factors approach. And what it talks about is why you're failing. And in this baby, clearly, we had attempts at intubation where a trainee had tried and another senior trainee was trying with the video laryngoscope. But clearly, we weren't giving enough cricoid. The airway was more anterior. And by giving good cricoid and having an experienced person intubating this baby, you could actually pass the tube down without any problems. Now, this is another baby. This is not a preterm baby, but this is a term baby where I'm using a video laryngoscope, where a trainee has had difficulty intubating. And what you can see is this baby's breathing. So we're not using drugs in this baby. You can see the glottis moving. You can see how the baby's moving. You can see the cheek here moving. And that's the glottis with the vocal cords. And a trainee is having an attempt at intubation. Can you see how the tube's not going through? Now, because this baby's light and we're not using sedation and paralysis, this baby's actually got vocal cord spasm. So actually in this situation, what we need to do is we need to stop intubating this baby, go back to doing IPPV. And in this situation, what we did was we stopped the intubation, we bailed out, we gave the baby some intubation drugs, as you can see over here, in order to allow the baby to relax. This was a sedative and a paralytic agent. And then we had a fresh attempt at intubation, again, a very experienced clinician who's intubating a baby who's now completely sedated and paralyzed. So the vocal cords are also paralyzed and the tube goes through without any problems. So again, we're following a concept, which means we're changing what we're doing based on what we see and how the baby is and why we failed the first time around. Now, if you continuously intubate a baby, what eventually happens is these babies develop glottic edema. And this is a baby preterm at 26 weeks of gestation who's developed glottic edema. And the classical manifestations are secretions. So the baby has severe secretions. But what you can see is you've developed quite significant swelling of the glottis. And with that swelling, can you see how the tube, this is a 2.5 tube, and it's not easy to get in. But you can't see any vocal cords. And what this needs is it needs the tube to be eased in very slowly, and it finally goes in. Now, we're quite lucky, but to give you a little bit of an idea, this was a situation where a baby had had repeated attempts at intubation and had developed glottic edema. And we stopped intubating this baby. We used sedation paralysis, but we also gave this baby some dexamethasone in order to reduce the airway edema. And then it was a very experienced consultant who finally had this attempt at intubation with a size 2.5 tube, which was the appropriate size tube. I think the common thing that you see with all these videos is in extremely small babies, the use of airway adjuncts like LMAs and iGels is very difficult. But the use of a video laryngoscope clarifies very clearly exactly what the problem might be, which then means that you can adapt what you're doing with the next attempt at intubation to provide the best attempt at trying to get this baby's airway secure. So all through a video laryngoscope, something that's not easily available. But if you have a baby who you can't intubate and you can't ventilate at 25 weeks, you can't use an LMA or an iGel. It's too large. You can't call ENT. The smallest scope that we have in our setup is a 2.2 fiber optic scope. So theoretically, you can get a 2.5 tube around that. But the question is, how do you get that scope into the baby's airway? What you can use in those situations is a video laryngoscope. And we use this quite frequently, mainly as a difficult airway backup, but are now training our trainees to start using this routinely. In our setup, what kind of video laryngoscopes do we have? So we have two video laryngoscopes. We've got the CMAC, which you can see on the right-hand side, and the Kaleidoscope, which is an anterior airway device, which I use specifically for babies who have Peyer-Robin syndrome, because it allows intubation looking at the screen with a special device that allows you to curve the tube at right angles. So actually, rather than having to intubate by direct vision, you can look at the screen and intubate. I think the advantage of using these techniques is you can actually see what's happening at the level of the glottis, But even if your trainee is having an attempt at intubation, you can see exactly what they're doing. The one thing to be aware about is the blades are quite different to the normal Miller blades that you use. So these are the CMAC blades. And while they're like Miller blades, they are very broad. And the actual space that you have to pass the tube is much smaller. So sometimes in situations, I mean, I would say almost invariably, I have to get somebody to pull the upper lip up when I'm using the CMAC in order to actually optimize my view. What I've become very good now is just looking at the screen and intubating. But you can also see the slight difference in size. So this is a blade that's 0, that's a 1. And the CMAC blades is slightly larger, but the smallest CMAC blade that I have, which is the equivalent of a 0. So there's no 00 size for the blades that you can use. So using a CMAC, I can intubate babies as small as 500 grams at this particular point. Now, besides a preterm baby, if you remember, we spoke in my last talk about babies who have broad tongues, babies with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, babies who have trisomy 21, where the tongue is quite floppy, very broad, and these babies are at risk of glossoptosis. But in those babies, getting the tongue out of the way sometimes needs a blade that's much broader than a Miller. And what we use is the Seward, and you can see how broad it is. But the advantage of using the Seward is it takes the entire tongue out of the equation, which kind of means it improves your view. You have Sewards, which are straight, and this is a straight Seward. But in preterm babies, what you can't use is an LMA or an iGel. Now, some of my colleagues, and I put these photographs in just in the last 5 minutes, asked me what an iGel is. So an iGel is a supraglottic device. It's a device that you can put into the mouth of the baby, which does not go into the tracheal opening via the glottis. It sits at the glottis. And using this, it covers the glottis so that you can effectively ventilate the baby. Now, this is a baby who is preterm, about 30 weeks of gestation. And what they're using is they're successfully using a laryngeal mask airway here. But in this baby over here, who's even smaller, they're actually using an iGel. Now, just because a lot of people who are attending this lecture have asked me, how preterm does a baby need to be for you to use an iGel or an LMA? So the recommendations are that it should not be used in babies under 34 weeks. And experience says that actually for babies under 2 kilos, it will be challenging to use. I have used an iGel in a baby as small as 1.4 kilograms. Now, what I would say is that you have to be very careful, because when you use an iGel in a non-licensed way in a preterm baby, often what you'll find is this area of the iGel will curve back upon itself. So if you're using the iGel in those circumstances and you can't move the chest, you should abandon that procedure and go back to mask ventilation and organize for somebody very experienced to be intubating that baby. Alternatively, if you have a video laryngoscope, I would say that's a much better option in situations like this. Personally, myself, I have never used an iGel in a baby smaller than 1.4 kilograms. And I would not routinely use it for babies under 34 weeks and 2 kilos unless my back was to the wall. I haven't had to use it in that situation frequently, just one baby once. Now, the question is, if you have situations where you need to use difficult airway adjuncts like a video laryngoscope, like an iGel or a broad blade, how do you choose when to use what? So what we've done is, after the British Airway of Perinatal Medicine produced its guidance, it talked about using an ABCD pathway to manage neonatal difficult airways. And we've adapted that so that we have everything to be able to intubate a baby, but everything to manage a baby who we can't intubate in the first attempt. That might simply mean mask ventilation with a nasogastric tube. Alternatively, if this baby has a Pierre Robin and is breathing, the question I always ask my trainees to ask themselves is, do I need to intubate this baby now? Is there another method by which I can intubate this baby? A. B, do I need to intubate the baby at all? Can I actually manage this baby just with mask ventilation? But if this baby is a Pierre Robin with an anterior airway, what about just putting an oropharyngeal or a Goodell in, putting the baby prone, and putting this baby into sufficient oxygen to be able to oxygenate? What about using a nasopharyngeal airway? These are all devices that can actually help you while you're deciding whether your baby really needs intubation or not. On the other hand, if you have a baby with microstomia or micrognathia, you can use oropharyngeal airway or a nasopharyngeal airway. If you have a baby with macroglossia, you can use a broad blade. Now, we've adapted these strategies and put them into an airway pathway, which talks about what to do if you fail your intubation, how to call for help before you decide to manage your baby, and what airway techniques you can use other than intubation to manage the airway while help is on its way. In the end, our facility does have the ability to be able to use a video laryngoscope. But for people who can't use a video laryngoscope, they can very much use a boogie, or they can use a supraglottic airway. So for the experienced user, they can use a video laryngoscope, but for those who can't, they can actually default to using an LMA or an iGel. Eventually, I'd say there's some babies who have structural problems and they will need to have ENT do a fiber optic intubation. And we have adapted the protocol so that we are escalating to get those people if we need it. More importantly, what you've got to do is design your airway trolleys so that the equipment in your airway trolleys is there. And we have duplicated this pathway into A, B, C, and D so that the equipment for each pathway is actually kept in each part of the trolley. We have 000 blades for babies under 500 grams. They're kept in A. So if I've got a baby under 500 grams, the nurses know that we need to take a 000 blade, because actually a 00 might be too large even for the smallest of babies. This is what they look like. And what you can see is in draw B, we've got the different kinds of blades, including the 000. In draw C, for the anterior airway, we've got iGels. But for ENT, we've got everything for a tracheostomy in draw D if we need to provide a surgical airway. This is what the video laryngoscope looks like. It needs to be cleaned very carefully. And a lot of people obviously struggle because it's quite an expensive device. So the Storz video laryngoscope costs about £6,500. And if you buy the blades, they're an extra, I think, 2,000. These blades obviously need to be autoclaved. And the question is, if you have one video laryngoscope and your blades are being autoclaved or cleaned, then what do you do? So there is a new cleaning system, which is called Tristal, which has been invented, with which you can actually clean blades before and after use. So once you've cleaned your blades, you can actually reuse them ASAP and reuse them within 4 hours. But if you were to keep a video laryngoscope and want to use it in an emergency setting, and you've not used it for 24 hours, you would need to cleanse them using the Tristal wipes. The entire process takes about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Very easy to do. So I've used these even in emergency settings. This is the view that you get. It's a really nice high definition view of the larynx that you can see. This is a 28-week baby that we're intubating at this particular point. So that's cricoid pressure. Tube slipping. Okay. So I've come back out. So I'm just getting more cricoid, and the tube goes in. So I can't emphasize enough how useful video laryngoscopy is in trying to intubate even the smallest of babies. The smallest baby that I've intubated with a video laryngoscope is 510 grams. You get a clear high definition view. You can see what your trainees are doing, but more importantly, you can see what is happening at the level of the glottis. In summary, what I'd say is every setup can develop a difficult airway pathway for their setup. You do not need high-tech equipment. A simple device like an RMA or an iGel, where you're having difficulty intubating, can help with babies above 2 kilos and 34 weeks of gestation. Obviously, if you have the ability and the facility to be able to buy one, having one type of video laryngoscope, which could either be the CMAC, could be the Storz CMAC, or it could be the Kaleidoscope, or could be the Inspiration video laryngoscope. So there are 3 in the market. There's quite a cheap version which is available from Israel with disposable blades as well. But you can see how that really helps when you have difficulties with management of the difficult neonatal airway. The key thing is being able to use this to be able to produce a pathway which you're then able to duplicate into an airway trolley so that everybody knows where the equipment's kept, what you use, and in which circumstances. But more importantly, the pathway also talks about how you escalate for help in managing the difficult neonatal airway. In summary, if I have a baby who I can't intubate at 25 weeks, and I'm having difficulty ventilating, my recommendation would be stick to the basics. Go back to MR SOPA. Can you mask ventilate this baby? If you can't mask ventilate this baby, has this baby got an inflated stomach? Put a nasogastric tube down, decompress the stomach. If the baby's breathing, well, what about using CPAP or high flow to keep the baby breathing while you decide how you're going to manage the airway? And in those situations, what I'd say is it's really important that you've got good mask seal if you're giving IPPV, that you've got neutral position, and that you're sticking to the basics, and that if a further attempt at intubation is planned, that you are providing the most experienced provider with the opportunity to intubate that baby, that you're not allowing repeated failed attempts at intubation by a single person. Thank you very much.